B1 family, welcome to Black Logic. So I'm going a little earlier than usual here, family. I got some other things to handle this evening, so I do apologize for posting somewhat late, but nonetheless, we're going to get this in. This is information that need to be told because once again, as the presidential election is coming closer to the last day, we need to talk about both parties, Democrats and Republicans alike, because they are selling Black Americans dreams without receipts. So we're going to dive deep into why neither Kamala Harris nor Donald Trump is truly the answer for foundational Black Americans. Because if we speak about the laws, the policies, and the real world evidence to back it all up, it seems as though there is none. Because let's start with Kamala. She's good at playing identity politics. You know, even before we go deeper into this discussion, let's build a background. Let's build a background here very quickly.
Senior political editor Mark Murray for a closer look at this new national NBC News poll. It shows that former President Trump and Vice President Harris, they are in a dead heat with just over 3 weeks until Election Day. Take a look at those numbers. Mark, thanks for joining us. Good to have you here. So just a month ago, Harris was leading Trump, but still within the margin of error. But now this is showing this deadlock. What's going on? How did we get here? What do you make of these numbers?
The timing is everything, Savannah. And it's important to note that our September poll came out right after that debate where it seemed that Harris ended up getting the better of Donald Trump in that showdown. Also, when our poll came out, the news environment was all about Springfield, Ohio, discussion about cats and dogs, very damaging to Donald Trump. But our poll shows that we end up having this deadlock mainly because Republican voters have come back home, particularly the Republican voters who are kind of squishy, non-MAGA Republicans who got turned off from the debate performance in that news cycle from September and are now backing him. That's why Trump's vote share goes from 44% in September to 48% now.
So, Mark, despite losing her lead, there is one aspect of this poll that could benefit Harris. That's the question of which issues actually motivate voters the most. Talk more about what we're seeing here.
Yeah, Joe, normally when we ask the kind of question, what is your top concern from this issue? When our poll and other polls ask it, it's cost of living, the economy that end up topping the list. But our poll asks a different question this month. And that is there one issue that so motivates you, you would vote for or against a candidate solely on that issue? Abortion comes out on top. Then it's immigration, followed by democracy and constitutional rights, then the cost of living. And Joe, I think that snapshot is really important because while most voters end up saying, hey, the economy, cost of living is my top concern, when you ask them what really motivates you, that's where we see abortion popping, particularly among younger voters, female voters. And so Democrats are hoping that that issue really drives a lot of their key voters to the polls.
It's so interesting, too, Mark, just to hear that the change in that question, the way it's asked, reveals something like that we might not otherwise have known. Also, the gender gap. This poll is pretty revealing there. How divided are men and women on the candidates right now?
We're showing a 30-point gender gap. Donald Trump having a 16-point lead among male voters, Kamala Harris with a 14-point lead among women. Normally when we look back at the exit polls in 2016 and 2020, the gender gap was around 20 points or so. If this ends up holding, that we end up having somewhere along the lines of a 30-point gender gap, this might be one of the defining storylines of this election season. So we'll be having to look at the exit polls on election day and the day after to see if that plays out. But this could be one of the very big storylines in November.
All right, Mark Murray, thank you as always.
I wanted to give you guys a quick breakdown of the poll showing here. And let me get this stopped here, family. To continue to run ads in the background. But nonetheless, they're trying to give you guys some poll numbers as we start to get into the broadcast here, because we understand how Kamala Harris, she plays a lot of identity politics. But where are her policies? She came out during a debate and not really stated any policy. She stated essentially what she was going to do. And we're being told to rally behind her by the likes of Magic Johnson, by the likes of Barack Obama, because she's representation. but representation without legislation is just a photo op. And that's what we've been getting. What legislation has she pushed back for Black Americans? Nothing substantive, nothing. She waffles on reparation. 1 minute she's in favor of studies, the next she's mumbling about helping everyone. But let me remind you guys, the Reparations Task Force in California, the state where Kamala was Attorney General, has been working for years, only for Harris to sidestep the issue entirely. She didn't even speak about the whole Gavin Newsom fumble and how he, behind closed doors, told him to fumble the reparations bill for the Californians there, and they still found out. On housing and wealth building, Kamala has no specific policies targeting Black Americans, despite the fact that redlining and the new age gentrification, as well as predatory lending practices, have been crippling Black wealth for generations. This is well documented. Where is the plan to eliminate housing discrimination under the Fair Housing Act? Only thing we've been hearing is absolutely nothing. And don't get me started on open border immigration policies, because Kamala is pushing policies that allow a flood of undocumented workers into the country. Workers who've undermined wages and compete for jobs at the expense of Black laborers who benefits is definitely not Black Americans. Now, if we get into Trump, and we know his statement, I believe in 2016, or he stated something on the lines of, what do you have to lose? The truth is this: we had a lot to lose under his administration, and we lost plenty. I know a lot of people are going to say, well, Black unemployment was at its highest, at its lowest, and the employment rate of Black Americans was at its highest. Again, these are policies that help the entire country. But if we are a specific group with specific issues and problems that has been basically chaotic from generations down, stemming from slavery in this country, we have had no policies that specifically target us. Trump boasts about his criminal justice reform, pointing to the First Step Act, but let's be real. That law is a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. It reduced some federal sentencing, and some people are like, well, he let go a lot of athletes and a lot of rappers, but it didn't touch state level incarceration, where most Black men are locked up on the state level, not the federal level. They are getting these rappers and entertainers on RICO cases, and we're talking about 1% of 1% of 1%. But majority of Black men are incarcerated on state level, which did nothing for them. So where's Trump's support for ending cash bail? Nowhere. What about laws to tackle qualified immunity that allows police to brutalize Black people with no consequences? Silent. In matter of fact, he was loud and proud to give more protections under qualified immunity for police officers to make them airtight. And when we speak about on the economic front, Trump brags about the opportunity zones just as well as Kamala, but data shows that investments mainly benefit who? Wealthy white developers, not Black communities. And his so-called tax cuts, the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, gave the biggest breaks to rich. They gave the biggest breaks to the rich, while working class Black families, you and I, so little to no benefit. And if we talk about white supremacy, Trump refused to explicitly denounce white nationalists, but he'll get up on stage and say how much he loves Black men. Because again, if we remember Charlottesville, there was very fine people on both sides. That's the thing about the internet. That's the thing about social media. Your words never get lost. They're always and forever recorded in the cloud. But we understand when he was referring to there's very fine people on both sides, that's code for I'm not rocking the boat, because these are some of my supporters. These are some of the MAGAs, which makes soft on hate crime, soft on domestic terrorism, soft on justice. So here's a pattern. Democrats pander with symbols. Republicans, they pander with fear. Both strategies leave foundational Black Americans holding the short end of the stick, because Democrats tell us to vote blue no matter who, because the Republicans are worse and the Republicans are racist. And we understand the Democrats are just as racist. They just don't wear a hood. And Republicans say they'll bring jobs back to the hood. They'll bring jobs back to the ghetto. But they ignore systematic racism entirely. And the cycle continues. Because if we were to look at some facts, like redlining has been illegal since Fair Housing Act of 1968, 68, I believe. But the practices still happen through mortgage discrimination. We've seen that. We've seen plenty of stories on mass media, mind you, about mortgage discrimination. What's the solution from either side? We remember those news stories where there was a Black family and they would have pictures up, and the adjuster would come in, the inspector adjuster would come in and put a low price tag on the home. And then if they would replace that same home with different pictures of a white family, it was significantly higher. And what I mean by significantly, family, we're talking about $100, $200, $300,000 in difference of the worth of that particular house. And if we get into the racial wealth gap, Black households own less than 10% of the wealth that white households do, because neither Trump nor Kamala has laid out a plan to address that through reparations or targeted economic policies. And here's the thing. What if they were never going to give us reparations, which they will? But here's my thing. Did you know they can actually curate and create economic policies that simply targeted foundational Black Americans? I'll move on. Police accountability. No one is touching qualified immunity. See, I was never for defund the police. No. There's some hoodlums, there's some gangsters, there's some mobsters, there's some mafiosos, there are some thugs that come to America, that are in America, okay, that we need police for, and we should not be defunding them. But when police soldiers with badges, race soldiers with badges, brutalize Black Americans who are being unjustly persecuted, who are unarmed and getting brutalized by the police, that qualified immunity should be lifted automatically. Because we understand qualified immunity is a law that shields police officers from lawsuits when they violate civil rights. And if you read through, some of you are going to say, oh, well, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, read the act for yourself. It gives no justice. It gives no protections to Black Americans. And matter of fact, it stalled in the Senate, and neither Trump nor Harris has a plan to revive it or revise it, which it needs to be revamped. Because here's the uncomfortable truth, family. We've been voting out of fear. We've been voting out of fear in that strategy. We've been voting out of fear because the Democrats have, for a very long time, have been running fear campaigns, and they've been having Black folk mentally fearful of Republicans in office. So we have not been voting on strategy. We're told to vote Democrat to stop the fascists, or to vote Republican to save the economy from the Dixiecrats. Both sides ignore us once they get what they want. And that is what they want, is to be into office. We can't keep relying on politicians who talk big but do nothing. I just recently saw the interview that Jason Black on the Black channel did with Jill Stein. Shout out goes to our Black brother, Jason Black, and his channel. Shout out to him. Great interview, brother. Very powerful interview. But there was a lot of topics that Jill Stein even tiptoe around, like illegal immigration. She basically said, we're going to stop building the wall, and we're going to fund billions of, listen to this, family, and she's represented the Green Party or the Independent Party or whatever party, but she was open to reparations. So there is a balance. There is a balance. I will say that. But she was open to reparations for all Black people, regardless of their lineage. Let me get back on immigration. I just want to give a quick synopsis, but go and support the Black channel and watch that interview he did with Jill Stein. Very powerful. But here's some key points. She was talking about funding billions of dollars to hire more asylum lawyers, right, and law enforcement agents to decipher who is friend from foe, who is criminal from their country, and to basically have a pathway to citizenship and to expedite immigrants to get work permits and to have a work visa. So again, she is part of this whole illegal immigration in these open door policies. Go and check out that interview for yourself by Jason Black and the Black Channel. Very powerful interview. Shout out to our brother. But we can't keep depending on all of these politicians because they're not doing what the people want them to do. And stop believing that you live in a democracy. You live in a republic according to the Constitution. People are trying to mix and master and remix what this country is about. Once you cast your vote, you have no voice. You have no power. They will go out and trick you and state that your vote is your vote is your voice. Your vote is your power. That's true. But once you vote for someone, you no longer have a power, and that is why no one wants to come and talk to you anymore. That's why. We get in line, we got our shiny new buttons, and we're dancing a jig, and we're cutting a rug, and we got the electric slide, and once you vote, all of that goes away. And you see basically nothing change in your neighborhood. One thing that was brought up, which is very powerful, is making Black Americans a protected class. We need hate crime protections that supersedes qualified immunity from the police because, family, when we look at whether it be white supremacist groups, individual white supremacists, and the race soldiers with badges, we need a hate crime protection against the police as well. And don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-police. Not all police are bad, but there's quite a few that make the batch of them look bad. Because we have very, very vulnerable communities where they're being over-policed and not like these other communities that are non-Black. And we also need targeted economic programs. We need direct federal funding into Black communities, not these vague promises that goes to everyone else except for us. See, I'll have people to join into the broadcast, people from other countries to join into the broadcast. And when you question them, well, what are these benefits and supports that you're talking about? And then I'll name the legislation. I'll name the act. I'll name the fund. And then they're quiet. The time has come. If these politicians can't give us policies, we can't give them our vote. It's simple as that. The couch is looking more and more tantalizing every day for me because we got to stop with this idiocy of the lesser of two evils. You're still choosing evil, family. Guess what? This country is going to run with or without your vote. The issue is here, who wants your vote the most? Who wants to be president the most? Who wants to be in power the most? No more lesser of two evils. Stop that stupid stuff. That's very silly that we keep saying, well, I'm just going to pick the lesser of two evils because I'm going to exercise my right to vote because my ancestors died for me to right to vote. They died for you to have the choice to vote. So you can have the choice, not that you are mandated to vote. We need to operate with strategic unity, align around specific demands, and use our votes as leverage. Don't fall for these symbolic gestures and empty promises, because if Kamala or Trump can't deliver, they don't deserve our support, period. If they cannot deliver, they do not deserve our support. We need to demand policies in black and white that addresses housing discrimination, mass incarceration, reparations, and hate crime protections. Because if we don't demand it, we'll be left with nothing but broken promises and shattered ballots. What did Malcolm X say? The ballot or the bullet, did he not? Hopefully this conversation is hitting home, family. If so, hit the like button up or down. Subscribe to the channel. Drop your thoughts in the comments. We have to be taken seriously as foundational Black Americans this election and the policies that they may or may not bring forth. So there's a lot of things we should be demanding prior to casting your vote, and that are the policies that are going to target our people and our community. Here are the current standings as we see them. I know at first, if you were here earlier, the news broadcast had them roughly at 48. It seemed as though the current polling here from NewYorkTimes.com has Kamala Harris at a 3% lead, but we understand when it comes to these polling, there is a 2 to 3% discrepancy. So they could still be tied, or Kamala Harris could be at a 3% lead there. Okay. So I see Volvo in the room. I see a DSB. Thank you for being a member for 7 months, brother. I appreciate your contribution to the channel. I see my moderator here, Jermaine Anderson. Thank you for moderating, sir. I appreciate your hard work. Thank you all for joining me here. I know I'm here pretty early, so a lot of people won't see this until later. But share this on your social medias as well. But family, I just want to come in, give you a quick synopsis and breakdown of the current standings and how neither party has came to the Black community and has specific policies that are going to target us and make us whole. We are still a broken people because of what this country has done, and this has bled through generations. For some reason, people believe you enslaved people for 250 years, and you have systemic barriers, and you have systemic oppression, and you have systemic suppression. And then only in the past 40 years, some of these things have been lifted, some of these things have been decreased, but there's still these very ceilings that Black people can't surpass. The same country that put these barriers in place is the same country that needs to lift them. Be one.